How is the real estate market doing? Let's talk about that. Pinellas County Realtor Organization just released their January 2024 report, and I'd like to dive into those numbers with you. Now, you can see behind me here that we've got a little bit decrease in closed sales, a jump in sales that were paid in cash, some new pending sales that are a little bit lower here, some extra new listings from what we had a year ago. And if you look at our inventory number, it's jumped by 55% year over year. So what we're looking at in general is a slight cooling of the market in recent months, but year over year, we're seeing a larger bump in inventory and stable prices, a little increase in prices, and more active cash buyers. Now, from my understanding of that, we're seeing some of that effect because of the increase in interest rates and how that's going to affect buyer demand and buyer ability to purchase and pay for different properties. So let's dive into these numbers a little bit more deeply. The absorption rate shows us what's going on as far as demand and how quickly the properties are selling. Now we can see here in 2022, January, February, March, we had a ridiculously busy market here in Pinellas County, where properties had many offers as soon as they were going onto the market. Now, January 2024, we saw a 26% absorption rate, which means that if 100 properties came on the market, 26 of them would be under contract that month. So obviously a lot slower, not a bad rate in general, just compared to what was going on 2 years ago. It's a lot slower. It's still showing as a seller's market, actually in that range. Now, if you look at condos, though, we're looking at a 13% absorption rate, and that's a lot different from a couple years ago and even last year. And part of what's going on in the condo market, I think, that's creating a change in demand and supply is some of the regulatory changes that have come into effect from a safety perspective, and also trying to force different associations to keep enough money in their coffers to do the repairs that they should be doing on a regular basis to keep the properties in good shape. So what I'm seeing is there are some assessments that people are seeing, and maybe there's assessments where money hadn't been collected to the point where certain expenses were fully funded when they would need to be redone, like say roofs or repaving parking lots. And so the new legislation that we see requires a certain amount of funding, and they're doing that in one of two ways. They're either increasing their dues for a certain number of years until they hit those numbers, because there's a deadline for that, or they're just doing an assessment right off the bat to collect that money. And we're seeing more people putting their properties on the market because they don't want to be paying those dues that are higher for the next few years. A lot of those tend to be vacation homes, second homes, stuff like that. But we are seeing more properties on the market, and then they're sitting there for longer because there's only so many buyers that are out there for these right now. And so, you have more to choose from as a buyer. Now let's dive a little bit more specifically into single family homes in Pinellas County. Closed sales year to year are similar. We're up about 4.6%. We see a large jump in paid in cash, so 22% increase for the number of properties that were paid in cash. That's huge, and I think that's a direct correlation to the interest rates being higher. So people who are able to pay in cash have been, because it just doesn't make sense to take out loans for as high as they've been. And taking out a loan at these rates diminishes the buyer's purchasing power. Median sale price year to year, we saw almost a 14% increase. Average sale price, we still saw a 13% increase. We have a increase in dollar volume, so we're seeing consistent sales, lots of sales, not just a couple sales at these higher prices. Median percent of original price, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, so you can see the trends on that. But year to year, you can see that, sellers are getting pretty close to their list price. Well, a year ago, they were getting almost 94% list to sale ratio, which means the price that they're selling at compared to the price that they are asking for a property, they're up to 95% now. Median time to contract is about the same. So it's taking a little bit more than a month from when a house goes on the market to when it gets a contract. And it's taking a little bit longer than 2 months for it to actually close. And then if you look further down here, we can look at the inventory supply, the number of active listings overall for single family is up 31% from last year. So there is more inventory on the market, which for buyers means they actually have some selection, and they might even have a minute or two to consider whether they want a house before they have to jump in and make an offer, because the time to market is the 31 days rather than or 35 days rather than, when we were seeing 3 days and people just didn't have time to consider whether they wanted something or not. So, and again, we're seeing month supply of inventory is 47% increase. So where it was 1.9 months a year ago, we're at 2.8 months. So that means that it would take about 2.8 months for the market to absorb all the inventory if nothing else came on the market right now. Again, cash sales, we can see up above that year to year, we're looking at a 22% increase for January, but you can see the percent of closed sales paid in cash for January 2024 was 41%. So that's a huge chunk of the market that was paid in cash that isn't typically. And if I move to the side here, you can see how that changes going back for the last year. So, we've been seeing in the mid 30s, the low 30s, and then jumped up to 41%. Median sale price and average sales price, it just shows you the difference between, is there one property that's pulling the median up because there was a huge expensive sale, or is it typical for properties to be selling at this certain sale price? So I like to talk about median sale price rather than average sale price when we're looking at appreciation over time. And here again, you can see how the median sales price has changed over time. So while a year ago we're up 13.8% from January to January, you can see that the prices fluctuated a bit. So the peak for 2023 was in July at 480,000. Prices right now are down a little bit from that, but you can see it went from 480, dropped a little bit, came up again, dropped a little bit, came up again. So as prices change, we typically see prices go up and come down throughout the year, which you can see from this graph showing going back to 2020. You see these little peaks and valleys, but it's nice to look at the year-to-year numbers so that we can see what's going on in the same time frame of the market year to year to year. I'm going to skip through dollar volume. Again, talking about median list price. So comparing the list price here, what somebody was asking for compared to what they actually got. And you can see going back a year that as the prices were higher, we were just talking about in July, you're seeing the median list price to sale price a lot closer. They were getting 98.5% of their asking. And then it came down again as the market cooled off a bit. Median time to contract and is a pretty important marker for you as well, because that's showing you, one, as a buyer, how much time do you have to think about whether a house is right for you? And as a seller, it helps you plan for what you're doing next, how long you're going to be on the market, when to start packing. So you can see January tends to be a slower month. And as we get into the summer and fall, the sales tend to pick up. So we were seeing, about 2 weeks mid-year, and then we're going back up to 30, a month plus this last January. Let's see. Now inventory, you can see that how inventory's changed over time here. And like I said, we're seeing fewer buyers on the market slightly, I think because of the interest rates changing what their demand is going to be. And then more listings coming onto the market, possibly as a result of, as prices go up, it just incentivizes more people to want to cash out of their properties. We're seeing a lot of properties that were rental properties, people cashing out of those because the price point has just gotten so high that it makes sense for them to do something else with that money. And this is another interesting one for you to look at if you're actually considering buying or selling. Looking at closed sales, the number of closed sales in the different price brackets. And so when we do an analysis of how to list and market a home, we're looking at what the activity is specifically in not just your neighborhood and your size range, but also in this price band that you're in. So this is for the whole county. You can see there's not a whole lot of sales that are happening under 200,000 for homes because our prices just don't sit in that range. But you can see a good amount of sales picking up, in the starting in the 250 range up into the 3 to 400 range, and then increasing. There's the majority of our sales are happening in the 4 to 600 range. But it's interesting to note that in the million or more, there were 72 sales. So there's a decent amount of demand in that higher end luxury market. Now, I want to compare that to new listings or listings and inventory in that market in general. So above, you can see the new listings, but I want to talk about the inventory in that band. So where we were seeing 70-ish sales in the last month for the $1 million range, there were 576 homes on the market right now in that range as well. So that's a lot of competition between listings for a handful of buyers. And then you can see the ranges in the other segments here, how many new listings came on the market in those different ranges. And I think, over time, you'll see that those numbers push down to the higher brackets because prices over time go up. Now, that's going to wrap up our summary on here. If you want to download this whole report, there's going to be a link to it in the blog post that accompanies this video on our website. Just go to whystpete.com and you can download that. Have a great day.